Hello and welcome to Building High Performance Cultures, a weekly series where we talk with executives from top organizations about how they've built high performance cultures and how they're leveraging their cultures as competitive advantage. I'm Marty Parker, the President and CEO of Waterstone Human Capital, and my guest today is the President of CMH Heli-Skiing Summer Adventures, Jeremy Levitt. Jeremy, welcome to Building High Performance Cultures.
Hey Marty, thank you very much for having me.
Delighted to have you. So just a little bit more on CMH and on Jeremy. So CMH Heli-Skiing Summer Adventures took home Canada's Most Admired Corporate Cultures Award in 2019. And we know that Jeremy played a large role in that success. He's been at the helm of the company since 2015. And prior to becoming president at CMH, Jeremy worked at Denver CMH parent company, Intro West Resorts, a name very familiar to Canadians, now called Alterra Mountain Company, where he led a variety of strategic initiatives, turnarounds, and corporate business development projects. Now, Jeremy started his career in mergers and acquisitions at Citigroup in New York, and then he moved to the private equity and distressed investing side of the business at Cerebras Capital Management. He then was recruited to Vienna, Austria, to invest money for Austria's fourth largest commercial bank. So mountains seem to follow Jeremy, or maybe Jeremy follows the mountains, I don't know. But Jeremy also received his MBA from the very renowned and esteemed Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, where he focused on management and marketing. And he earned his bachelor's degree from another great school, Babson College, where he received the Wall Street Journal Award, which is presented to the graduating senior with the most distinguished academic record in the field of finance. What an incredible achievement that was. So Jeremy, for people who are not familiar with CMH Heli-Skiing Summer Adventures, tell us a little bit about what you do, the business, and the culture of the organization.
Sure. Thank you for such a great introduction. CMH is the world's largest heli-skiing and heli-hiking company, and we operate 12 luxury lodges in the winter, 3 in the summer, and our lodges can be found throughout the interior of British Columbia. CMH actually invented heli-skiing in 1965, and we proudly carry on the tradition of providing life-changing mountain experiences for our guests. That's our mission, and we believe that extends beyond just the guests to our staff. And I always say that if you have happy employees, you're going to have happy guests. And really, it all starts with the staff and building a culture that nurtures and encourages passion. And I can't tell you how many guests I've met that have come up to me at CMH and said, I came here 20, 30 years ago as a bucket list trip. It was going to be a one-time thing, and now I come back every year. Or, these people who have incredible resources could go anywhere they want in the world, but they come as many as 12 weeks and stay with us for 12 weeks in a winter. And they could go anywhere in the world, anywhere they wanted to. I meet people who the first time come to CMH and they struggled, and they go back and they change their diet and they change their exercise in order to come back and be better each year. And this one's more on the staff side, but CMH is responsible for countless people meeting their spouses or partners. And if those aren't life-changing, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, no, they are life-changing. And you mentioned life-changing being a part of the mission. That's an incredibly lofty daily objective, if you will. So how do you build and sustain a culture that lets you and CMH deliver life-changing experience for your guests?
I think, building and maintaining culture starts at the top. It starts with myself as well as my senior leadership team. And we as leaders, we have the opportunity to create the culture that we want to work in. And culture is just so critical, and it's really a shame how often it's ignored in many companies. And even if all you care about is financial performance, culture drives financial performance. So you better focus on it. But you need everyone's buy-in to make it work. It can't just be one person, one leader. And fundamentally, I think 3 things need to happen in terms of building a great culture. The staff need to feel that they're part of something bigger than themselves. And that's the leadership team's job, to help them understand how their role plays into the bigger picture. People want to feel recognized for their contribution, and that takes many forms. It's not necessarily monetary. And you want to be surrounded by people that you like and enjoy. And there's a great book out by a Stanford professor called The No Asshole Rule. And, we take that to heart at CMH. And, if you do those 3 things, you're going to be off to a great start.
As a leader, and as a leader of your leaders, Jeremy, How do you see your role in both building culture and maintaining it?
Sure. My role personally is when I came to CMH, really wanted to have a high performance culture, but also a place that people wanted to come to work. And so we relaxed unnecessarily restrictive office policy around dogs, vacation, other employee perks. I focus on setting and communicating our strategy in a way so that everyone knows how they specifically play a role in the company's success. And then you pay attention and do these little things like take groups of new staff out to lunch. You host transparent Q&A sessions at town halls. I spend my weekends generally going to the CMH lodges so I can interact with guests and staff. And I go out of my way regularly to speak to employees at all levels of the organization so I can get constant feedback and make sure that I have the finger on the pulse. And really just trying to model the behavior I want from others. And we feel this like deep sense of responsibility. This is such a unique business that probably should not have survived for as long as it has, given how cyclical and seasonal and capital intensive and risky it is. But we want to make sure that we shepherd this business into the future and we leave it better than we found it.
That's amazing. And you talked about the seasonality, and so your business model really is different than a lot of organizations, for the reasons being, you have that seasonality, but you have remote locations that you own and operate, and I imagine a fairly significant kind of level of risk and stress from time to time. So when you think of kind of aligning people, bringing them in, keeping them in the business, how do you ensure that you recruit and kind of retain for fit, and be front and center and lead with all of those kind of unique aspects that you have to address?
Yeah, we really in the hiring process focus on personality and cultural fit. It's really not just about skills. We're not doing rocket science here at all levels of the organization, including myself. And so it's really important that we get the right people in the door. And it really only takes one or two people to be toxic and ruin it for everyone else. And when you're dealing with guests who are spending as much money as they are, like they want a perfect trip and they have very high expectations. And so most of the skills can be taught, but attitude and passion and hard work, that can't. So we look for people who are going to be great team members instead of just individual contributors.
Cool. Now you put a lot of time and resources into something that I wouldn't say is common yet, but becoming more and more important in our daily lives, and that's mental health training and support for your team members. So talk about how that came about, and possibly even if you could, Jeremy, the lessons learned from that process, because I'm sure there are other leaders here that are listening to that would love to learn from your experiences to take it back to their organizations.
Yeah, I think mental health is quite often overlooked, and it really does matter, especially in high stress environments. And we're a little unique than most organizations and in what we deal with, but it is part of overall health. And when a company shows a deep care for the individual, they're going to perform at their best. And the effects of trauma get worse over time. And we've seen this show up in performance issues years down the road for some of our people. And so when you're able to help your people become resilient and keep your people mentally healthy, they're going to be engaged and high performing. And our people in the lodges, they work remotely for long stretches away from their families. And it's important that we take care of them and recognize that there's more to an employee than just the job they perform.
That's very interesting, and another unique element to your business.
Mm.
But similarly, you've done a lot of work around organizational health and creating a positive and empowering kind of work environment. So why has that particularly been important, and what have been the results?
So employees who feel empowered, they take ownership of their work, and they understand how their work furthers the company's goals. And so we've seen employees grow into jobs that didn't exist 5 to 10 years ago, and they've literally been developed out of the unique skill sets that they've developed while at CMH. And internal promotions, succession planning, these have helped employees move between departments instead of leaving the company to go get the skill sets that they've wanted. And in terms of overall results, we've been setting records every year since we began focusing on organizational health. And while I'm sure the outperformance is not solely attributable to this, I don't think that we could have grown the business as far and as fast without focusing on this culture.
Very cool. And you also support a lot of leadership development and empowerment programs. So how did you decide to focus on this and maybe talk about some of the progress you've made to date? That's a keen area of interest for us as leadership development.
Yeah, the leadership development programs have been really important, and we actively talk to our staff and find out what they're interested in and see if we can curate some programs for them. On the empowerment side, giving back to those is really important to us, and we have these unique access to these amazing places. And part of our mission, of course, is providing life-changing mountain experiences, and so we can provide those experiences to those people who are struggling in their daily lives. And so we've partnered with Outward Bound on a 5-year partnership, and we work with veterans as well as women who have experienced various kinds of abuse. We've also partnered with the Tunaha Nation, and we run a youth leadership program, and we bring these people out to our lodges, and we take them out into the wilderness, and we just show them, really an incredible time in this amazing environment that they otherwise wouldn't have access to. And, how it relates to the staff, it really inspires them to see CMH giving back and providing these opportunities, and then seeing the impact it not only has on the participants, but the staff that also participate in those programs.
That is super cool. And that youth program must be incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that. So the last few months, 15, 16 weeks have been pretty exceptional for us all. And for, large businesses and small businesses alike. What has the COVID-19 pandemic meant for you and your team? And what changes, and I'm sure they're numerous, have you had to implement? And how have those impacted your culture to date?
I think, the biggest and most obvious one is moving to a zero revenue environment, and closing winter 45 days early. And that may not sound like a lot, but when you have 90 to 120 days to make the majority of your profit for the entire year, it's a big deal. We recently canceled our summer operations because of the border closures between the US and Canada. And, we've really noticed that all of this has created a lot of anxiety amongst our staff. Our corporate office is in Banff, and at the high point, unemployment was at 85%. And so if you weren't working at CMH or a construction company, you were unemployed. And so everyone knew all of their friends were unemployed, and you're just sitting there waiting and wondering when I'm going to be next. And that's a miserable, miserable feeling. And so to try to alleviate those fears, we as a leadership team really tried to over communicate and hosting transparent town halls. Our senior leadership team, including myself, wrote weekly blog posts about the impact that COVID's having on the operation, on our families, our personal lives, and really just trying to let them know what our plan is and how we plan to get through this. And then, the other way it's impacted us is the work from home situation. That has been new, and it was very abrupt, and we all went home and leveraged technology to do it. And we haven't been measuring it, but I feel like productivity is, the same or better. But it's been harder to keep the culture intact when everyone's, and so you have to be really deliberate about it, and you have to find new ways to foster relationships. And that's been tough.
Yeah, it certainly is challenging for a leader. And so as a leader, as you support kind of your team and the organization, and as tireless as this work is, setting the organization up to move forward through and beyond this, how have you thought about supporting your culture and your people and maintaining all this great things that you've built as you look out and determine what needs to adjust and change? Because as I've said many times, normally we don't want to change our culture. Our values stay the same. We only change culture, and we do it slowly when it's going to benefit us. Or if there's a crisis, it changes. Well, it's changing on all of us, workplace culture particularly. So what are you doing as a leader and as a leadership group to kind of plan to take that group forward into the kind of the new realities?
Yeah. So, aside from the time I spend on setting strategy, nearly the entire remainder of my time, as well as my senior leadership team's time, has really been spent on culture and people, and having one-on-ones with our direct reports, where we're sounding boards for our people, hosting these town halls where we all speak to how are we adjusting CMH's operations to work in the new normal? Really just trying to be present and visible. And I really love being in the trenches alongside my people, and I like my leaders to also do the same. I have very little interest in having people reporting to people so they can report into me. And, I want to be close to the action. And I've always had this, idea of the Wizard of Oz leader who hard to get a hold of and operates behind the curtain. And that's really what I want to try to avoid. And so just spending as much time as we can on culture, transparent communication, over communication in order to keep the glue of the company together.
So what do you see as kind of future critical to kind of aligning your people to this phenomenal culture that you've developed and attracting kind of new talent to, as you said when we kicked off, it's your culture that drives performance. So looking into this, how are you going to make sure that you continue to do that and coming out of zero revenue to what I'm convinced, because you focused on your culture, is going to be probably some of the best years you've ever had. But having said that, how do you focus on those things?
I think, you need to have a guiding light, and, those three pillars that I mentioned earlier, having a fun workplace, being surrounded with people they like, recognizing our staff for the work that they do, and, communicating the overall strategy of the company and how their role plays into the organization so they can feel like they're part of something larger. Those three things don't change whether you're in crisis mode or in the good times or the bad times. And, we really stick to those. And I love having these strategic pillars and the mission, vision, and values that are just timeless. And we were very fortunate to be on a really good foot heading into the crisis, and those trusts and those relationships will help us see it through.
Jeremy, and what trends, what do you see is going to be kind of coming in the future in terms of trends that will impact high performance cultures?
Sure. The work from home model has now been proven. People, we live in Banff, so there's not much of a commute to work. I guess from Canmore, people do commute, but there's not much traffic. That is such a negative part of people's lives. And so, how can you source talent from outside your geographic area? Especially in small towns like Banff, where we're headquartered, where certain expertise like computer programming and accounting is not as widely available as it is in a city. So can you expand your geographic area of talent? 100%. And then when you do onboard remote employees, how do you ingrain them into your culture? Because you don't want a splinter cell forming, and you want to make sure that they understand what CMH is all about, and just this video technology that's just become so prevalent. It's really an opportunity to connect with a wider range of people within the company, and we'll have meetings and people will interact with others that they might not have had a chance to really interact with if it was just a normal meeting. And so, those are the things that I think about, and, how we're going to leverage technology and this wider geographic area to source talent.
Well, it's a wonderful opportunity because for many people, they can live in Banff now and work anywhere and, in a headquarters in Banff. Mm-hmm. So, and we're seeing it in the great majority of engagements that we've started through, and most recently as we start to emerge out of this, it's really been interesting. Clients who have been very focused on the location is here, it's got to be here, that it's all changed. It's really fascinating. So I think you're right. The big differentiator is going to be how they onboard, how they connect. Does the workplace become the culture place, the face-to-face place, the meeting place? I think we're going to see some big changes. We're involved in a lot of planning on that now and sharing of those best practices. But I think you're clearly on to what everybody else is trying to figure out. And I think as we onboard people, Jeremy, we're going to have to look at least as strong as we would have onboarded them in person. If not differently, but at least as strong and with as many elements. And I think we're going to end up better as an outcome of this.
Absolutely.
For sure. Last question I have is, if there's a young person today who is kind of on their high performance culture journey as a leader, possibly as an entrepreneur, what is the one piece of advice that you'd give them as they embark on that path?
Sure. I would say create the culture that you've always wanted to be a part of. If you've never experienced a great culture, do the opposite of the bad cultures and the bad things that you've experienced. And, it's not rocket science. And when I get asked about culture and what we've done at CMH, I always want to give these profound, unique things, but it's not like that. It just requires effort and attention and being very deliberate. And it starts at the top, and everyone needs to be in on it.
Yeah, great insight. Because right now, what's happening is we're taking a pause and looking at what is the culture we want to create, where are we today, and what are the gaps. And that's, culture will get created for you, won't it? If you aren't purposeful in curating it. So I think that's great advice. But I think learning from you today on those three pillars of wanting to be in an organization that has a purpose that's bigger than themselves, that where people are recognized and where there's the no asshole rule, as you said. Funny that it took a scholar from Stanford to kind of come up with something so simple, but in truth, that alone will drive high performance cultures. But it also takes great leadership who are contemporary, who are not afraid to change, who stay up in front. And that's exactly what we get with you, Jeremy. So we're very thankful for you taking the time today with our listeners and being on the show. And we want to thank you sincerely to Jeremy Levitt of CMH Heli-Skiing Summer Adventures.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me, Marty.
Absolutely delighted. And join us next week for another episode of Building High Performance Cultures. And in the meantime, if you want to learn more about the topic, go to waterstonehc.com, and may your future be bigger than your past. Thank you.